She sat in the sonographer's office, her hands trembling, heart racing, and every nerve screaming that something was terribly wrong. The technician looked at her with a mix of shock and hesitation, breaking the silence that hung heavy in the air. Annabel felt a wave of disbelief and betrayal crash over her. The world she had trusted so completely seemed to crumble in that very moment. You might be wondering how she got to this point. This is the story of Annabel, a devoted mother whose life was turned upside down in a single moment. In this tale of betrayal, deception, and hidden truths, the life she thought she knew, her home, her husband, and her child would be tested in ways she could never imagine. From luxurious houses and golden gifts to the terrifying realization that the ones closest to her could conceal unimaginable secrets, Annabel's journey will make your heart ache, your eyes tear up, and your spirit rise. But beware, appearances are often deceiving and some blessings come hidden beneath storms and shadows. Welcome to Afritales by Sophie J, where every story takes you on a journey through betrayal, destiny, and raw emotion across Africa. Watch closely, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe. You won't believe how this tale unfolds. Annabel's laughter echoed through the sunlit halls of her elegantly decorated home, a melody of happiness that seemed to melt the very walls around her. She had always been a vibrant soul, a young woman with a light in her eyes that drew people near and a heart full of warmth and hope. Married to Dr. Martins, the wealthiest and most respected surgeon in the city, she felt as if she had been chosen for a life that many only dreamed of. From the moment they met, she had been captivated by his charm, his gentle words, and the way his hands, skilled in saving lives, could also hold hers with such tenderness that the world outside seemed to disappear. The first months of their marriage were blissful, filled with candlelit dinners, surprise flowers, and whispered promises of forever. Annabel often caught herself staring at Martins during breakfast, marveling at the ease with which he seemed to command respect, wealth, and admiration while still remaining attentive, affectionate, and utterly devoted to her. In his presence, she felt safe, adored, and, most importantly, worthy of the love she had always longed for. Friends would often ask how she felt being married to a man of such wealth and prestige, and she would smile, shaking her head as if to say, "I know, I can't believe it either." Yet behind that smile, a subtle twinge of disbelief lingered, the kind that whispered to her in quiet moments, "Can someone like him really love someone like me?" Still, that doubt was fleeting, brushed aside by his constant acts of care, the luxury they lived in, and the bright future that seemed to stretch endlessly ahead. Their mornings were often a spectacle of perfection, as if taken from the pages of a magazine, though Annabel never thought about it that way. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee, the soft hum of classical music in the background, and the sunlight pouring through the tall windows created a bubble of serenity around them. Martins would often brush a strand of hair from her forehead with a tenderness that made her heart leap, and she would find herself lingering in his gaze, captivated by the subtle intensity in his eyes. The same eyes that could command a hospital operating room with unwavering authority, but softened completely for her. They talked about dreams, laughed at trivial jokes, and planned vacations to places Annabel had only ever imagined in her fantasies. Life was a smooth golden ribbon winding gently through days of shared happiness. Even in the quiet moments when they sat together in the garden surrounded by the scent of blooming flowers, Martins would hold her hand and whisper, "You are my world, Annabel. Nothing will ever change that." And in those moments, with the sunlight dancing across his face, she believed him completely. She believed in the perfection of this life, the warmth of this love, and the security it promised, a security she had never known in the uncertain twists of her younger years. Every glance, every word, every gesture reassured her that she was exactly where she was meant to be. But as flawless as life seemed, there was a fragile tension beneath the surface, a tension masked by luxury and smiles, as if the world's darker undertones were waiting quietly for the right moment to surface. Annabel didn't notice it yet, but in the way Martins occasionally lingered with his phone, the subtle way he redirected conversations when questions about his wealth surfaced, there was a shadow that didn't belong in the bright glow of their happiness. The house, with its pristine marble floors and glittering chandeliers, felt like a fortress. Yet it also held secrets behind locked doors, whispers behind closed windows, and choices made in the silence of night that no one could foresee. Annabel's days passed in a haze of comfort and joy, each one blurring into the next with the same golden sheen of perfection. She believed love alone could protect her from the world's harsh realities, never suspecting that sometimes those who held your heart could also wield the greatest danger. Even as she prepared for the most significant chapter of her life, the journey into motherhood, she felt a quiet sense of invincibility, the kind that comes from total trust in the man she had chosen, the man she believed could never betray her. The thought of harm, deception, or betrayal seemed alien, something she only read about in the tragic stories whispered by friends or seen in films that ended with heartbreak. For Annabel, life was radiant, and her trust in Martin's was absolute, unshakable, and beautifully complete. Their love story seemed destined to be admired by everyone who knew them. From the first glances exchanged at lavish social events to the intimate evenings shared in the quiet corners of their expansive home, every moment was framed in perfection. Martin's had a reputation that preceded him: the most skilled, wealthy, and respected surgeon in town. Yet, to Annabel, he was simply her husband, a man who held her with such devotion that she could almost forget the world outside their walls. Friends often expressed disbelief at the life she now lived, praising her for her luck, her beauty, and the devotion of a husband who seemed more a fairy tale than a man. But in private, in the quiet moments when she lay awake watching him sleep beside her, Annabel felt a deeper sense of gratitude and awe. She would trace the line of his jaw, feel the warmth of his hand against hers, and whisper a silent prayer of thanks for having been chosen to share a life with him. For the first time, she believed that perfection was possible. For the first time, she felt completely safe, cherished, and undeniably, unshakably loved. And little did she know that the life she now treasured so fully was on the brink of revealing secrets so dark, so unimaginable, that every ounce of trust and love she had placed in the man she adored would be challenged in ways she could never have foreseen. The golden beginning she celebrated today was only the first chapter, the fragile prelude to a story of love, betrayal, and shocking revelation that would shake the very foundation of her world. The excitement that had once filled Annabel's heart began to take on a new shade, tinged with unease and the subtle weight of doubt. Her pregnancy had been smooth, flawless, and celebrated with joy by friends and family alike. But as the months wore on, Martins began insisting on decisions that left her questioning him in ways she had never imagined. At first, it was small, suggestions about diets, appointments, and the doctor she should see. Annabel trusted him implicitly, always agreeing because he was her husband, her protector, the man who had promised to guide her safely through every storm. But then came the insistence on a C-section. She remembered the first time he brought it up, sitting across from her in the sun-drenched living room, his hands folded neatly over the expensive silk armrest of his chair. "Annabel," he said, his voice calm but firm, "I don't want you to go through labor pain. I will perform the operation myself. I can't trust anyone else with you or the baby." She had hesitated, trying to argue gently that perhaps a natural birth was possible, that countless women delivered safely every day without complications. Yet, with a smile that seemed to mask the faintest edge of steel, Martins brushed aside her concerns. His words were persuasive, his tone confident, his demeanor so convincing that she felt foolish for even entertaining doubt. She looked into his eyes, the same eyes that had made her heart flutter with love, that had promised safety and devotion, and she agreed. And so, she allowed him to take control, believing she was doing the right thing, believing she was in the hands of a man who loved her beyond measure. The day of the operation arrived, cloaked in an air of excitement and anticipation that masked the undercurrent of something darker. Annabel was wheeled into the pristine, brightly lit operating theater, her heart racing with a mixture of fear and the blissful trust she had in Martins. She remembered the sterile smell of the room, the gleaming instruments arranged with precise care, and the confident smile on his face as he leaned down to kiss her forehead. "Everything will be fine," he whispered, his hand lingering over hers. "I will take care of you both." In that moment, Annabel's love for him surged like a tidal wave, drowning out any lingering apprehension. She let herself sink into the anesthetic's embrace, her last conscious thought one of gratitude and unwavering faith. When she awoke, her world had changed. Ivan, their son, lay swaddled beside her, perfect and healthy, and Martin stood at her side, smiling, his presence as reassuring as ever. Gifts were presented, including a brand new luxury car, a tangible symbol of the life she had been promised. The house, the car, the admiration of friends, it all felt like proof that she had married the right man, that she had chosen wisely, and that she had nothing to fear. She didn't yet know that the same hands that had promised to protect her life had quietly rewritten her destiny in ways she could never have imagined. The first few weeks at home were clouded with exhaustion, but Martin's constant attentiveness made her feel cared for, loved, and cherished. Yet, as days turned into weeks, the subtle pain in her lower abdomen began to whisper that all was not as it seemed. At first, it was mild, almost ignorable, and every complaint she made was met with a gentle smile and reassurances that it was normal after a C-section, that her body was still healing, that she simply needed time. Martins brought her an array of medications, concocted explanations for every twinge, and even suggested rest cures, special teas and massages, all administered with a devotion that appeared tender and concerned. Annabel wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust him implicitly, as she had always done, but the nagging doubt began to grow, gnawing at the edges of her confidence. She started noticing the way he subtly redirected her questions, how he occasionally received messages he seemed keen to hide, and how certain explanations for her discomfort were unnecessarily convoluted. The trust she had placed so fully in him began to quiver, yet she dismissed her instincts, reasoning that she was tired, hormonal, or overthinking. After all, this Martin's her protector, her devoted husband, the man who had risked everything to ensure her happiness. How could she even begin to imagine that the very man she loved with her whole heart could be capable of betrayal? Years passed, and the pain never truly subsided. Annabel's daily life became a complex balance of motherhood, marital devotion, and the lingering, unshakable ache that no drug or treatment seemed to heal. Each time she expressed her suffering, Martin's responses were carefully calculated, words of reassurance, tender touches, promises of a future procedure that would completely fix everything, all wrapped in a veneer of genuine concern. But deep inside, Annabel felt something shifting, a truth her heart refused to name. And then, one fateful afternoon, while Martin's was away on a medical trip overseas, the pain surged with an intensity that left her doubled over in despair. Panic replaced the quiet acceptance she had grown used to. She tried calling him, but the distance in his tone and the way he instructed her to wait until he returned stirred the first real sense of fear she had ever known. That fear, sharp and undeniable, pushed her to seek a second opinion, to step into a hospital far from the city, far from anyone who might recognize her as the wife of the most influential surgeon in town. There, in the cold, sterile room, under the gaze of a stranger, the truth revealed itself. A truth so monstrous, so unimaginable, that it tore the foundations of her world apart. Her left kidney was gone. The only surgery she had ever consented to, the only moment she had trusted with her life, had been a deception. Martin's had harvested her kidney, sold it, and used the proceeds to buy her gifts, to mask the horror of his crime. In that instant, every touch, every smile, every word of reassurance over the past years crystallized into one undeniable fact. The man she had loved, the man she had trusted more than anyone, was capable of betrayal so dark that it defied comprehension. And the realization struck with bone-deep clarity. This was only the beginning. The operation that had taken her kidney might have been a single act, but the intent, the calculation, the sheer audacity of it revealed a monster hidden behind a mask of devotion. Annabel's mind raced, a storm of disbelief, horror, and anger. The luxurious home, the gifts, the car, the golden veneer of their life together, it was all a facade, a meticulously crafted stage upon which the true Martins had performed his darkest work. And as she sat trembling, staring at the screen, the seeds of a new resolve began to take root. She would not remain a victim. She would survive. She would uncover the full extent of his betrayal, and when the time came, she would ensure that justice, harsh, inevitable, and unyielding, was served. The days following the devastating revelation were unbearable for Annabel. The home that had once been a sanctuary of warmth and laughter had turned into a gilded prison, each corner echoing memories of trust betrayed. She moved through the rooms like a ghost, her eyes vacant, her hands trembling as they brushed against objects that now felt tainted by deceit. Every picture on the walls, every carefully arranged vase, every golden fixture seemed to mock her, a constant reminder of the man she had loved and the life he had stolen from her. Annabel's nights were the hardest. The darkness of her bedroom pressed down on her like a weight, the quiet hum of the city outside turning into a sinister echo of her own racing thoughts. She lay awake, clutching Ivan close to her chest, his innocent eyes watching her as if sensing the storm inside her. How could the man she had loved, the man whose hands had once promised safety, orchestrate such a monstrous act? How could she have been so blind? Tears became her constant companion, slipping silently down her cheeks, staining the silk pillowcases she had once admired. Her sobs muffled in the night so her son wouldn't hear. Friends called, family visited, yet Annabel withdrew further, not trusting herself to speak the truth, not ready to reveal the horror of a man who had hidden murder beneath love. The betrayal had cut deeper than she could ever have imagined, twisting inside her like a living thing, gnawing at every belief, every memory, every feeling of safety she had once known. As days turned to weeks, Annabel began to experience the physical manifestation of her trauma. The sharp, gnawing pain in her remaining kidney made each breath a labor, each step a struggle. She had been told repeatedly by Martins that her symptoms were normal, that recovery took time, that she simply needed rest and patience. But now, free from his immediate influence, the truth became undeniable. Her body had been violated in a way no words could ever describe. She visited hospital after hospital, doctor after doctor, only to encounter disbelief and shock at the condition she was in. The very thought that someone she trusted had removed her organ, sold it for personal gain, and then presented gifts to mask the crime was unbearable. Nights blurred into days as she wrestled with waves of nausea, fatigue, and excruciating pain. Simple tasks like lifting Ivan or walking through their garden became monumental challenges. The opulent life she had once cherished now felt like a trap, a gilded cage from which there was no escape. Every phone call, every ring, every message from Martins, even when he was abroad, sent shivers of fear down her spine. The man she had revered, the man she had allowed to be the closest to her body and soul, had been a predator hiding in plain sight. Her own home, once a haven, became a labyrinth of dread where shadows whispered secrets she wasn't ready to confront. And yet, even in the darkest moments, there was a flicker of defiance inside her, a quiet, stubborn spark that refused to be extinguished, telling her that this suffering, no matter how deep, would not define her. Hunger for justice gnawed alongside her physical pain, a dual torment that made her nights almost unbearable. She often found herself sitting alone in dimly lit cafes, holding Ivan in her lap, staring out the window at a world that had moved on while she remained trapped in the nightmare Martins had created. She questioned her own judgment, her own instincts, wondering how she could have been so utterly blind to the signs. Each memory of tender gestures, soft smiles, and whispered promises of love now clawed at her heart like knives. The golden beginnings, the laughter-filled halls, the happiness she had once believed in, all were lies, carefully constructed by a man whose love had been a mask for greed and cruelty. The betrayal was not just physical, it was psychological, a calculated violation of trust so intimate and so complete that it left her questioning her own ability to recognize truth and danger. And yet, amid this darkness, Annabel's spirit, though battered, began to gather strength. Pain became her teacher, betrayal, her guide. Each day she endured became a testament to resilience she hadn't known she possessed, a preparation for the reckoning that she knew she could not avoid forever. The most agonizing moment came when Annabel realized that Martin's plan was not yet complete. He had spoken of returning home soon, of performing another operation, another procedure to relieve her pain, he claimed. But the memory of the missing kidney, the words of the sonographer, and the shock of that first betrayal pressed upon her like a vice. She understood then, with chilling clarity, that his intentions were far darker than she had imagined. Fear, anger, and determination coalesced into a singular, consuming resolve. She would not allow herself to be victimized a second time. In the quiet corners of her home, as she tended to Ivan and watched him play with toys that now seemed meaningless, Annabel began to plan. Every sleepless night, every pang of pain, every tremor of fear became a catalyst for action. She researched, she observed, she sought out doctors she could trust, and she quietly gathered information that would become her armor. Each visit to a distant hospital, each test, each medical opinion reinforced the terrible truth that Martins was not the devoted husband he pretended to be, but a predator who had woven a web of deceit so intricate that even she had initially failed to recognize it. Yet, even as despair threatened to consume her, a small ember of hope burned within her, the knowledge that she was not powerless, that the life she had built with Ivan, the love she held for him, and the fire of her own resilience could not be taken by any man, no matter how cunning or cruel. The suffering was real, brutal, and relentless, but it had also begun to forge her into someone stronger, someone sharper, someone who would not allow betrayal to define the rest of her life. And so, in the shadows of pain, Annabel began to rise, not yet triumphant, but determined, unwavering, and ready for the path that would lead her from victimhood to vindication, from despair to the justice that she knew must one day be hers. The first step in Annabel's rise was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet monumental in its significance. After months of fear, pain, and sleepless nights, she began to reclaim small pieces of her life, small victories that reminded her of the strength she had almost forgotten she possessed. Every morning, she woke with Ivan by her side, breathing in his innocence and realizing that her resilience was not just for herself but for him as well. She refused to let her son grow up witnessing despair and defeat. He deserved a mother who could stand tall, who could fight, who could turn tragedy into triumph. With this resolve, Annabel began taking meticulous steps to rebuild not just her body, but her mind, her confidence, and her sense of purpose. She started attending consultations with reputable doctors far from the city, discreetly gathering knowledge about her medical condition and the ramifications of losing a kidney. Each session was a revelation, not just about her health, but about the courage she had left untapped within her. Every word from the doctors, every scan, every medical opinion she collected became tools, weapons in a battle she was only beginning to understand. And with every step, the fog of fear that had clouded her heart for so long began to lift, replaced by a quiet, simmering determination that no deception or betrayal could ever extinguish. Beyond her physical recovery, Annabel understood that knowledge was power, and in the absence of trust for the man who had once held her life in his hands, she began to educate herself in every way possible. Late nights were spent poring over medical journals, legal texts, and news articles about organ trafficking, corruption, and justice. She learned the language of medicine, the nuances of law, and the strategies necessary to hold powerful people accountable. Every page she read, every fact she memorized, became ammunition, a shield against the man who had so cunningly betrayed her. She also began cultivating alliances quietly, reaching out to friends, colleagues, and even distant acquaintances who might aid her when the time came. Annabel realized that while fear had isolated her, strategy and preparation could empower her, and for the first time in years, she felt a flicker of hope that transcended pain. With each new discovery, she began constructing a mental map of how she could confront Martins, how she could protect herself and Ivan, and how she could ensure that his manipulation would unravel. The process was painstaking, exhausting, and sometimes terrifying, but it also awakened a strength she had never truly known. A primal, unyielding will to survive, to thrive, and to reclaim her life from the hands of the man who had sought to steal it. As she began to navigate this new world of preparation and vigilance, Annabel also focused on her personal growth. She exercised her body gently, regaining strength and stamina lost to illness and despair, knowing that a strong body would support a strong mind. She revisited passions that she had abandoned in the shadow of fear, rekindling her love for reading, writing, and even simple walks in the park with Ivan, where they would talk, laugh, and dream together. These small moments, seemingly mundane, became acts of rebellion against the suffocating control Martins had exerted over her life. Annabel began to realize that every step she took, every skill she honed, and every ounce of confidence she rebuilt was a testament to her resilience. Her pain had not destroyed her. It had forged her into someone sharper, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous to the man who had once thought her powerless. Friends began to notice a subtle change in her demeanor, the way she walked with renewed purpose, the way her eyes sparkled with quiet defiance, the faint but unmistakable aura of someone who had survived a storm and was now preparing to reclaim what had been stolen. In her home, once a palace of fear, she carved spaces for empowerment, study, and planning. Every document she filed, every note she took, every conversation she held in secret became a building block of the empire of her resolve, laying the groundwork for the moment when Martins would finally face the consequences of his actions. Yet, perhaps the most profound transformation occurred within Annabel's mind and heart. She began to see her suffering not as a mark of weakness, but as a catalyst for greatness. Pain had sharpened her instincts, betrayal had honed her judgment, and fear had awakened a clarity that could not be bought or taught. She envisioned a future where she would not just survive, but thrive. Where she would not merely escape Martin's cruelty, but ensure that justice, in its most unyielding form, was served. She meticulously planned her steps, considered every contingency, and anticipated every move he might make upon his return. At the same time, she nurtured Ivan, ensuring that his childhood remained untainted by the shadow of deception that had consumed her early years of motherhood. Every moment of her rise was a reclamation of dignity, of power, of life itself. The once fragile, frightened woman was now a force to be reckoned with, her pain transformed into a carefully calibrated weapon, her fear reshaped into relentless determination. And, in the quiet solitude of her newfound strength, Annabel understood a truth that would guide her in the chapters to come. Survival alone was not enough. To truly be free, to truly reclaim her life, she would need to rise higher, think sharper, and strike with precision. The dust from which she had emerged was no longer a prison. It was the fertile ground from which a new Annabel, stronger, wiser, and unstoppable, would rise, ready to confront the darkness that had once threatened to consume her completely. The moment of reckoning came subtly, almost imperceptibly at first. Martin's returned from his overseas trip, confident and unsuspecting, certain that his plan to operate again, to further violate her trust and perhaps claim what remained of her body, would proceed without interference. But Annabel was ready. She had anticipated every possible move he could make, prepared for every excuse, every lie, and every attempt at manipulation. The confrontation was not dramatic in the traditional sense. It was surgical, meticulous, and devastatingly effective. In the quiet of her home, under the guise of normalcy, she revealed the evidence, documents proving the sale of her kidney, medical opinions confirming the impossibility of consent, and hidden communications that exposed his intent. Martin's confidence faltered as he realized that the golden veneer of his life, the respect, the wealth, the admiration, could not shield him from the consequences of his actions. He had underestimated her, underestimated the power of a woman who had been betrayed but refused to be broken. The confrontation was not only about exposure. It was about reclaiming every piece of herself he had tried to destroy. Every moment of fear she had endured, every tear she had shed, and every ounce of pain she had endured transformed into verbal precision and undeniable proof, leaving Martin speechless, unmasked, and finally confronted with the reality of his crimes. But transformation was more than revenge, it was reclamation, the act of taking back life, identity, and dignity. Annabel stepped fully into her new existence, embracing a persona that was equal parts grace and force, wisdom and fire, love and unshakable resolve. Her days were now filled with purpose-driven action, creating awareness about organ trafficking, advising other victims of betrayal, and mentoring women who had suffered in silence. She shone in society not as a trophy wife or victim, but as a woman who had faced unspeakable betrayal and emerged not just alive but victorious. Martin, stripped of his power, arrested and charged to court, faced the consequences that had once seemed impossible to imagine, brought low by the very woman he had underestimated, the woman whose pain had forged a weapon of justice more effective than any wealth, charm, or influence he had wielded. He was judged and was found guilty with every evidence presented by Annabel. He was sentenced to life imprisonment. And as Annabel held Ivan close that evening, watching the sunset paint the city in hues of gold and crimson, she understood that true transformation was not only about defeating those who had wronged her, it was about reclaiming herself, her agency, and her right to live fully and freely. The fire that had once burned with fear now radiated with strength, and in that glow, Annabel knew that she had risen from the ashes, a woman reborn, unbreakable, and unstoppable, ready to face whatever challenges life could present with courage, wisdom, and the unyielding certainty that justice, when wielded with intelligence and heart, always prevails. The world that had once seemed suffocating and dark gradually transformed before Annabel's eyes, not because it had changed, but because she had. The pain, betrayal, and fear that had threatened to define her life became the foundation upon which she built her legacy. Annabel understood, with crystal clarity, that survival alone was not enough. She needed to create meaning from her suffering, to ensure that the darkness she had endured could illuminate the path for others. Every decision she made was guided by that vision. She founded initiatives to help women who had been betrayed, exploited, or silenced, offering support that ranged from legal guidance to psychological care, ensuring that no one else would endure the loneliness she had once felt. Hospitals, counseling centers, and safe havens became part of her mission, each establishment a testament to her transformation from victim to savior. She personally oversaw every detail, from program structure to funding allocation, ensuring that her efforts would be sustainable, impactful, and far-reaching. What had once been an ordinary life filled with fear and manipulation now became extraordinary, a life of purpose, influence, and undeniable power, built on the ashes of her suffering. In doing so, she not only reclaimed her own dignity but extended that reclamation to countless others, creating a ripple effect that would echo far beyond her immediate sphere. Annabel's relationship with Ivan deepened in profound, transformative ways. Every day, she nurtured him not only as a mother but as a teacher of resilience, courage, and integrity. Together, they would explore the world, their bond growing stronger with every shared experience, every lesson imparted, and every memory created. Ivan became not just a son, but a living symbol of her victory over darkness, a tangible reminder that life, even after unimaginable betrayal, could still hold beauty, love, and joy. She encouraged him to dream boldly, to question injustice, and to value empathy above all else. In the warmth of their home, laughter returned, soft and genuine, no longer forced or tainted by fear. These moments, small yet monumental, were victories in their own right, for they represented the triumph of life, love, and human spirit over cruelty and deceit. Through Ivan, Annabel could see the manifestation of her strength, the living proof that suffering, when met with courage and intelligence, could give rise to a legacy that was enduring, inspiring, and profoundly transformative. As Annabel's legacy expanded, so did her inner peace. She had confronted the man who had betrayed her, exposed his crimes, and reclaimed her power, but she also recognized that true closure required more than justice. It required understanding, forgiveness, and acceptance of the journey that had brought her here. Each night as she sat quietly in her study, reviewing the progress of her initiatives, speaking with those she had helped, and reflecting on the path she had walked, Annabel allowed herself moments of gratitude. Gratitude for her survival, for her intelligence, for the unshakable courage that had carried her through the darkest periods of her life. She forgave, not for the sake of Martins or those who had sought to harm her, but for herself to release the burden of bitterness, to clear her heart for the work she was destined to accomplish, and to solidify her transformation into a woman unbreakable in spirit, purpose, and resolve. It was in this delicate balance of justice and forgiveness, of reclamation and peace, that she discovered the true power of resilience. No longer defined by the actions of another, Annabel's identity was fully her own, radiant and commanding, a beacon for those navigating their own storms of betrayal, suffering, and doubt. In the culmination of her journey, Annabel stood as a living testament to the transformative power of courage and perseverance. The life she had rebuilt, the foundations she had laid, and the people she had empowered were all reflections of her indomitable spirit. Martins, stripped of influence and confronted with the undeniable consequences of his actions, became a cautionary tale, a reminder that deception, cruelty, and exploitation, no matter how calculated or hidden, could never outlast the force of a will forged in suffering and refined in justice. Annabel's story, once a private ordeal marked by betrayal, pain, and fear, became an inspiration to countless others, a narrative of resilience, empowerment, and hope. She had turned tragedy into triumph, suffering into strategy, and betrayal into a blueprint for victory. And as she walked through the halls of the institutions she had founded, watched Ivan laughing freely under the sun, and observed the smiles of those whose lives she had touched, she knew, without doubt, that she had not only reclaimed her life but had left a permanent, transformative mark on the world. Her journey from darkness to light, from despair to empowerment, was complete, yet the legacy she had begun would continue to grow, a shining testament to the enduring power of courage, intelligence, and the human spirit. The morning air was crisp, carrying with it the promise of a new chapter in a life that had been anything but ordinary. Annabel stood at the balcony of her home, overlooking the city that had once been both her sanctuary and her prison. The sunlight glinted off the high-rise buildings, reflecting the same brilliance that now radiated from within her, a brilliance forged in fire, tempered in betrayal, and polished by years of resilience. Every decision she had made, every painstaking step she had taken, had led her to this moment of quiet triumph. The city below bustled with life, unaware of the quiet storm of justice and transformation that had quietly reshaped the life of one woman, yet Annabel felt the weight of victory in her chest. She thought of Ivan, playing innocently in the garden, and felt a surge of protective pride, knowing that her son would inherit not fear but strength, not doubt but clarity, not despair but hope. The house, once a gilded cage of betrayal, now felt expansive, welcoming, and alive, a reflection of the freedom she had fought tirelessly to reclaim. Every room, every hallway, every golden fixture that had once symbolized deception now mirrored her hard-won liberation, turning spaces of fear into monuments of courage. Annabel's mind wandered to the man who had once been the center of her world, Martins. His arrogance, his deceit, and his cold, calculated betrayal had been exposed to the world in ways he could never have imagined. Legal proceedings had stripped him of the respect and influence he had wielded so arrogantly, and every lie he had spun was now laid bare for all to see. But Annabel understood that his downfall, though satisfying, was only one piece of the story. True victory lay not in revenge alone, but in the transformation of her own life and the lives of those she had touched along the way. She had created a network of support for women, children, and families who had suffered in silence, ensuring that their voices were heard, their pain validated, and their strength nurtured. The institutions she had founded flourished, each one a testament to her resilience, a beacon of hope that shone brightly in a world that often seemed indifferent to suffering. In her heart, she knew that Martin's actions, as monstrous as they had been, had inadvertently sparked a force of justice and empowerment that no one could suppress. The woman who had once been silenced, betrayed, and diminished now commanded attention, respect, and admiration, not through wealth, manipulation, or fear, but through courage, intelligence, and the unwavering pursuit of what was right. As the day unfolded, Annabel reflected on the profound changes within herself. She realized that closure was not about erasing the past, but integrating it into the story of who she had become. Every moment of pain, every sleepless night, every doubt and fear had contributed to the person she was today. A woman whose strength could inspire generations. She thought of the women she had mentored, the children she had helped, and the countless lives touched by her unwavering commitment to justice. The city, once a silent observer of her suffering, now bore witness to her triumph. Annabel understood that her journey, though marked by betrayal and suffering, had ultimately become a blueprint for empowerment. The lessons she had learned, the resilience she had cultivated, and the courage she had harnessed would echo long after the final chapter of her personal ordeal had closed. And in that realization, she found peace, not the fleeting comfort of ignorance, but the deep, enduring peace that comes from knowing she had faced darkness and emerged stronger, brighter, and unyielding. The final moments of her story were not marked by grand gestures or dramatic proclamations, but by quiet, enduring symbolism. Annabel walked through the garden with Ivan, the sun casting a golden glow over their path. The flowers, once merely decorative, now symbolize growth, renewal, and the beauty that can emerge even after devastation. She held her son's hand, feeling the life she had fought so hard to protect and nurture in her grasp, and she whispered a silent vow to continue building, to continue fighting, to continue inspiring. The world would remember her not as a victim of betrayal, but as a woman who transformed pain into power, fear into action, and suffering into legacy. Martin's, stripped of influence and exposed for his cruelty, was now a shadow of the man she had once trusted, a cautionary reminder that deception and greed could never withstand the force of resilience, intelligence, and courage. Annabel's story, once darkened by betrayal, now shone as a beacon, a reminder that even in the deepest shadows, light could emerge, hope could flourish, and life could be reclaimed with determination, wisdom, and an unbreakable spirit. And as she watched Ivan laugh, free and unburdened, Annabel knew without doubt that her journey, though harrowing, had reached its ultimate triumph, a life fully reclaimed, a legacy fully realized, and a heart fully healed, ready to continue shining long into the future. To my amazing Afritales family, thank you from the depths of my heart for every view, every comment, every share, and every moment you spend on this channel. Your love and support give life to these stories and prove that African storytelling is powerful, meaningful, and worth celebrating. Because of you, Afritales by Sophie J continues to grow as a home for stories of destiny, betrayal, resilience, and triumph, stories that touch hearts across Africa and beyond. I am deeply grateful for your loyalty and belief in this journey, and I promise to keep bringing you stories that move your soul and stay with you long after the video ends.